You're listening to Leadership Loading, a podcast that inspires leaders to be continuous learners and provides insight for those making the leap from the front line to the boardroom. My name is Jason McLaren, and I'm an Air Force firefighter veteran and safety expert turned entrepreneur and nonprofit director. I'm sitting down with industry leaders to talk about their leadership traits and lessons they have learned that can make an impact on future leaders. Hey everybody, it's Jason McLaren with the Leadership Loading Podcast. Today our guest is Neha, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about his coaching firm and what he does. You know, I like his phrase on his website. It says, "Your time is precious. Don't waste it on months of trial and error." So we're going to talk about making your journey easier in your business. So Neha, can you please introduce yourself for us?
Well, yeah. Hi, Jason. It's a pleasure to be here, to be your guest on your show. And I'm the fail coach, known as the fail coach, but I that's really what I am, to be honest. And fail coach is trying to help people to have healthy relationship with failure, because as entrepreneurs, we really have to fail a lot to achieve some successes, although those successes highly outweigh all the failures at the end. But there's just no other way. I don't know a single entrepreneurial journey in this world that wouldn't have a lot of mishaps, failures, roadblocks along the journey. So that's something that's really, really important. And the second thing, which comes from my own personal experience, because, for majority of my adult life, I wasn't a coach, I was an entrepreneur myself. So I guess I'm coming through this whole coaching thing in a bit different angle, from being an entrepreneur first and foremost. And I had 4 very successful companies go bankrupt literally overnight because they were connected together through a loan for one of them that was in real estate, and I lost everything. I even went $5 million into personal debt, and it was all because the foundations weren't there. And it's really very similar to what we are seeing right now. I mean, if we look at 2018, 19, we had this magnificent and great economic good wave. Shares rising, real estate rising, people not being afraid and scared and fearful, spending money, buying stuff. And it was pretty hard to not be successful in the past few years.
Right.
What we are seeing now at the beginning of 2020, coronavirus, Italy in shutdown, Germany possibly, and UK going into lockdown as well, Saudi Arabia and Russia fighting for oil prices, Turkey opening borders and possibly creating another immigration crisis in Europe, elections, Brexit, and so on and so on. There's a lot that's going on, and it really, it doesn't really matter how maybe you and I see this whole coronavirus. Is it overblown, underblown, this or that? The thing is that all of this is creating fear in fellow human beings, meaning in fellow consumers. And so, right now, maybe you are thinking of buying a new television, but then right now you might say, you know what, we might rather postpone this purchase. The one that we have still really works, and maybe it's better that we have a little cushion on the side. So let's not spend our money on things that aren't completely necessary. What that creates, and then plus, events getting canceled, airplanes not being full, and so on. A lot of money is lost, and that can lead eventually to the next recession, to the next financial crisis. So again, right now, it's super important to bring this awareness to people that laying down solid foundations, relying just on a funnel and marketing and sales process is just not enough.
Definitely. So how you had a lot there. Yeah, I definitely agree with, buying things we don't need, and I had suffered with that, coming out of, growing up poor and then joining the military. We had a steady paycheck coming in, and I was making pretty good money towards the middle of my career there, and I just bought everything I didn't need. And you know I agree that we had good times and bad times. So you kind of hinted to it. Can you tell us how the fail coach was born? Your title there?
Oh, I mean, it's really because of all my massive failures in the past. Like I said, I started my entrepreneurial journey at 18. I dropped out of high school at 17, started my entrepreneurial journey, had a few successful companies, all doing 7, 8, multiple 8 figures. Then the financial crisis came. Then all of that was wiped out. I went through severe depression, anxiety, darkness within me, nuclear explosion happening any moment in my head, and so on, all the way down to getting seconds away from committing suicide. And then thankfully, I had the aha moment. I realized, because at that time it was very easy to blame fault for what happened to us on the financial crisis, recession, governments not, doing their job, and so on. But I, for the first time, I realized it was all me, and because it was all me, I can do something about it. And then it took me 3.5, 4 long years of constant daily internal fight with the old Miha, the new Miha that was being born, personal development, business development. And then in 2014, I started a startup, and I was able to scale that startup from 0 to multiple 8 figures in the first year, and then to multiple 9 figures in the next year. And then 1 year later, I had a successful exit through a Fortune 100 company. And so I proved mainly to myself that I actually learned something from all those past mistakes. And then I went on a very long vacation. During that vacation, after a few days of partying and having fun, I opened Meetup app and just started going to meetups, because I had to be surrounded with fellow entrepreneurs. When you go to networking events, you share a little bit of who you are, where you're coming from, and so on. People loved the story. They loved how I was able to bounce back. They started asking me, how do you scale? How do you do this? How do you do that? And I honestly just fell into the whole coaching business. And then one day, when I was like, okay, so let's do this. It feels really good because I help others, and it's a very warm, fuzzy feeling in my heart. Let's just do this. And I was sitting with my friend. We were having a few beers, and I was like, how do I name this thing? Like what should be the name of my company and my brand? And it was actually him who said, you always talk about how important it is to have healthy relationship with failure, how to fail fast, fail forward, how do you lay down foundations so that you can recognize failure faster, how you can recession proof, fail proof your business in certain ways. You are the fail coach. And I don't know, maybe it was the beer, but I really loved it at that time. And I never looked back. I still love it. Even though some people think that, I'm just trying to be funny with kind of like, haha, fail coach, success coach. But when you go deeper, you do realize, like I mentioned before, that every entrepreneur, we will have so much more failure along the road than how much we will have successes. And it's very important that you know how to deal with that, how you can minimize that, and so on. So failure, just like, one day we will all die and we all have to pay taxes. I guess failure is like that imminent part of our life, whether we want it or not. And you really can't avoid it as entrepreneur, because if you want to avoid failure, you have to stay in your comfort zone, and nothing good ever happens in the comfort zone. So you can't really be an entrepreneur if you just stay in your comfort zone.
Right. And you talked about your struggles and, all your, how you had to reflect on everything. I know a lot of people say that they have to deal with, those negative inputs on their, on their career or coaching or their business. How can we deal with someone like that that's, uh, being surrounded by people like that don't believe in what we're dreaming of or what we're trying to achieve?
Well, entrepreneurship is a very lonely thing in general. I mean, if you're not lucky enough to live in places like, Chicago, Austin, San Francisco, where you have a very vibrant community of entrepreneurs, and you can hang out with them all day, every day, then you are really responsible for creating your own support environment. You are responsible to stop listening to those people, even if it's family members. I mean, they don't do that because they want bad things to happen to us. They want to protect us, because everybody knows that being an entrepreneur comes with failures, comes with, this and that. And usually people who love us the most, because they want to protect us, they try to steer us away from the entrepreneurship. But I think here you will really see how much you really want it and how big that hunger is in you to be an entrepreneur. Not everybody is a fit to be an entrepreneur, and that's okay. I mean, if everybody would just be an entrepreneur, then who would be a doctor and a nurse and so and this and that. So we can't all be entrepreneurs. But I think this is the first test, how much you really want it, and then you definitely can create your own supportive environment. I mean, I'll give you an example. So 2.5, my huge passion and how I spend my free time is helping with animal rescue. And because of that, I moved 2.5 years ago. I moved to Eastern Europe, where they have this huge problem with stray animals and so on. And most of the time you will see me chasing dogs around the streets and so on. And I have 4 dogs of my own that are all rescued from this same streets. And not many people here were entrepreneurs, and there was no community for entrepreneurs. You had a few meetups, like, for IT developers, Java 101 and WordPress 101 and stuff like that. And I was all alone. I didn't knew anybody outside of the dog rescue thing, and those people weren't entrepreneurs. And like I said, I love being around entrepreneurs, not just virtually, but also, you want to go for a beer, for a coffee, and so on. So I really just created my own meetup. And at first, I think on the first meetup, 7 people came. But now, whenever I do a meetup, over 100 people come. And I also just do like free volunteer community work with fellow new future entrepreneurs. I'm mentoring a group of 30 people. And so, I have plenty of people now that surround me who are entrepreneurial, and we can talk about topics that are entrepreneurial and so on. So if there's no meetup where you live, you can consider creating one, and so on. So there's always plenty of ways how you can create that supportive environment for yourself. I'll give you more examples. Part of my morning routine is while I'm drinking coffee, I put on TED Talks on my TV, and I watch 2 or 3 TED Talks. When I'm driving, I listen to podcasts instead of radio. I have books lying all around my house, not necessarily because I'm reading them. Often it's enough for me to just see the cover and I get back into that mood. When my phone rings, is that song from John Bon Jovi, "It's My Life" and "It's Now or Never." And things like that. So little simple things, I have posters on walls about my dreams. some of the things that I want to still achieve, that remind me of that. Post-it notes on in my bathroom window mirror, with affirmations and so on. So there's plenty that you can do yourself. And of course, we have the online world. We can be part of Facebook communities. We can be part of LinkedIn communities. We can join masterminds. If we don't find one, we can create one, and so on. So, you have to create that supportive environment for yourself, and just work with what you have, instead of wishing for what you don't. I mean, of course, it would be the best thing to live in Austin, but I can't just move to Austin. I'm not a US citizen. And now with the new president, it's not that easy, or it's even harder, to become a resident. Even if I would, want to, it's very much harder than it was.
Definitely. And you talked about building your group of like-minded people, and a lot of times we call that building our tribe or building our, whatever our group is. And I even say take that further and kind of name it your group. There's a lady on YouTube that I follow, and she has her group, and I believe they're called the Boss Babes or something like that. It's all female entrepreneurs, and they get together and, like you said, talk about the stuff that's going on in their company and things they've got to work on. And when you're all the same like mind, then it's easy to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said, there's so much. I mean, I just gave a few examples, but there's so much that you can do. You can start your own podcast. You can, invite guests who you want to talk with, and who maybe are your role models, and who maybe, I mean, I know a few people who are very young who created their podcast or YouTube channels, and they look up to certain people, older entrepreneurs who are quite visible, and they asked and asked and asked and asked until those people were saying yes to appearing on their podcast and so on. So there's just so much you can do, so that really shouldn't be an excuse. So it really boils down to how hungry you are, how really, really badly you want it.
Yep. It's all about, that drive and that ambition. And I'm going to do a quick plug for our Leadership Apprentice League. It's our Facebook group where we have all those like-minded people together that want to, build their career. The only way you can get access is through our Patreon page, patreon.com/leadershiploading. But we'll move on from there. So, Miha, what is your method for teaching business development? You built up this coaching firm. How do you teach people?
So I have my own system, and it's not so much my own. I mean, I didn't reinvent the wheel. I hate it when other coaches saying, oh, I found a secret, this and that, because it really doesn't work that way. But there are basic principles, just like gravity. You can't avoid it. So are some basic principles to how you build a business. And it's really like my past experience combined with the hand holding, the guidance through those steps, focusing on the right step at the right time so that we aren't all over the place. I call my program Framework for Freedom, because the idea is what I'm teaching my students is a framework. I'm not giving them, like everything. I'm not giving them fish. I'm teaching them how to fish. So I'm giving them the framework to building a business that they can reapply as many times as they want and create as many businesses on those same basic principles over and over. And the freedom, because we all want freedom. All entrepreneurs want freedom, but then most of them end up being solopreneurs and not the real, and not really having the freedom. They might have the freedom of money. This is like when I do one-on-one coaching, this is the most often the case. They have the freedom of money. They have 7, 8, 9 figure business, but they have to work 70, 80, 90 hours, 100 hours per week in their business. And, they have no freedom of time. And it's only when you have both where you have freedom of choice, which is the ultimate freedom, what you will do and how you will do. So my way is to, teach people how to really create that system that they can trust. Trust is a huge issue here, because if you don't trust the system, or if you don't have the system, then most entrepreneurs don't trust other people. So they will take on all the cash flow generating things in their business on themselves. And then, they are completely lost. So it's about how to set up that foundation, how to set up that system, processes, and all of that in place, where you can then actually enjoy the freedom of what you've created.
Great. Awesome. All right. So one last question, and then we'll talk a little bit more about how to get in touch with you. But so we wrapped up episode 15 a couple of days ago, and we're talking about work-life balance. And I know you talk a little bit about that on your coaching, but what are your thoughts on making a good work-life balance with your work, fun, and your family?
Well, I talk a whole lot about that, actually, because I hate this whole hustle, grind BS that's going on in the online world. Because being an entrepreneur does not equate, hustling all day, 24/7, and so on. I mean, that's the opposite. That will get you to the point of being a solopreneur, to the point of burnout. And that is probably the fastest way for you to end up in hospital. And I've been there. It's a lot about it. It goes from my own experience. So a very healthy life balance. And I hate work-life balance as well, because, that implies it's work and life. I'm always talking about healthy life balance. I take that whole practice that is known from the Buddhism. I don't know the name, but it's a circle, and then you divide it into 8 pieces, and each pizza slice is one part of your life, and you can put whatever you want that encircles your life. Like family, friends, finances, business, health. And spirituality, and so on. And you are trying to work on all of them, at least on a weekly basis. You want balance between all of them. If you can't achieve that on a daily basis, you should on a weekly basis. So really, when I plan my week on a Sunday afternoon, I plan everything else before business. And what's the magical thing? When you put boundaries, you actually accomplish more and more of the important stuff, because you have to be really resourceful with how you use your time when you have little of it. Instead of going into day with that abundance mindset, I have my whole day for business. And then you end up spending 2 hours on Facebook and 3 hours on YouTube and all of that, and you really don't accomplish much. So less time you plan for business, more focused you are on what should I do today with the limited 2 or 3 hours that will generate the biggest return on the investment of my time for my business, getting me closer to my goals and dreams. So I'm a very big advocate of healthy lifestyle, because the thing is, the more you do things that you really love and enjoy, and I'm not saying that you don't love and enjoy your business, but there must be other things as well. The more you do all of that, the more you rest as well. Resting is also very, very important. The happier you are, the more full of energy you are, and that reflects on your business as well. And so you do more in less time. So it kind of all falls together. But yeah, you really, my suggestion to my clients is always to let's put boundaries on how much the business should take up of our life. and let's work around this, because we need to find that life balance. Otherwise, at one point you start asking yourself, like, why the hell am I even doing all of this, and not having anything else to enjoy apart from just building a business. That's also not a good way to go through life, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, of course not. You've got to balance there. And on the episode, we talked about it, and then we talked about making it not so much about balance, because everybody assumes balance is, 50-50, 50-50 or a equal. But sometimes you're going to have those long work weeks or a long work day. But it's all about harmonizing that with your work, your fun, and your family on the other side, right?
Sure. I mean, every now and then you have to do a sprint in this area or that area of your life. It's very important that you put very strict boundaries on those sprints as well. Otherwise, they can easily turn into a marathon, and you can't run a marathon with the pace that you would run a sprint. And this is what most people try to accomplish. They want to run a marathon, but with the pace for a sprint, and then they burn out. That's the problem. And we have to understand that our life is a marathon. It's a journey. But we have to run it in a way that we would run a marathon, and that is working smart, not hard. If you look how the marathon runners are, they're always very mindful, very aware of how much energy they still have, they still can use, where to slow down, where to even let somebody go ahead, but they have a plan. But then in the last couple of hundreds of meters, they put on the pace if somebody is chasing them. So they also do a few sprints along the road, but they're very limited sprints to maybe a few hundred meters. But they are very smart how they run a marathon, and that's how you need to run your life. And yes, sometimes you have to do a few sprints here and there, and it won't always be super balanced, but you're trying to balance it as much as possible, at least on a weekly, on a monthly basis, to give enough time to all the things that make your life complete.
Awesome. So how can we find you on the internet?
Well, the easiest thing is just you go to Google and you search fail coach. And I'm still the only crazy person who calls himself fail coach. So the first few pages will be, our Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram and so on. And then, they can just choose whichever platform they prefer and follow me there. I try to give a lot of content out, valuable content, applicable content on all those different media platforms. Another way is to go to my website, fail.coach. So there's no .com or anything, just fail.coach. But yeah, I think the best thing is to just connect with me on Facebook.
Awesome. Anything else for the listeners?
I don't know. I would just say, if they are thinking about starting an entrepreneurial journey, or they already are on the entrepreneurial journey, especially with everything that's happening right now, two things are super important. One is having those solid foundations in place, really solid foundations. So make sure, recheck that. And then the second thing is you need to develop healthy relationship with failure. You just have to, because there will be so much failure on that journey than successes. And that's a good thing, because those are from failures, it's where we learn the most and we grow the most, and what makes us bigger and better anyway. So failure is a very, very good thing.
Great. Thanks, Miha. Everybody check out our show notes for all of the links for Miha's fail coach, and make sure to follow us on all the social media sites. Thanks, Miha. Thanks for coming on.
Well, thank you, Jason. It was a huge pleasure to be your guest, and I hope your audience will get a lot of value from this.
Definitely.
Thanks for listening to the Leadership Loading Podcast. You can support this podcast on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/leadershiploading to get access to exclusive content, chats, and a whole lot more. Again, that's patreon.com/leadershiploading, or visit our website, leadershiploading.com, for more options.